Well, first of all, indoor plants like to stay very dry most of the time. The trick is to water and soak the soil completely and then allow the palm to dry out, allow the soil to dry out over the course of 3 to 4 weeks in a lot of cases. And you don't want to keep it moist constantly and all the time, but you do want to let it dry out quite a bit. So come over and lift up your pot, and it feels pretty light, and it could probably use some water, but wait another week. Put it off. Okay, it's been about another week. We're back to our palm here, and the leaves have began to droop just a little bit, and when I go over to lift up the pot, it's really dry. I mean, I can't hardly feel any moisture in there. It's extremely light, so it's time to water it. So how do most people water their indoor plants? Well, they take a cup, they fill it up with tap water, and then they go up to their plant, typically with a little saucer or pan at the bottom, and they'll just start pouring in a little bit of water, whatever seems like it's enough to hold it out for another couple weeks. This is the wrong way to water indoor plants, especially with the saucer underneath the bottom. What happens is the plant soaks up the actual H2O that's in the water, and it leaves your calcium, your minerals, your salts, your other deposits behind in the soil. This causes a buildup of all of these salts and minerals in the soil. It causes the soil to become salty and eventually alters the pH on it, which hurts the plant, ruins its health, and that's how you begin seeing blacking at the tips. A lot of people look at it and they will say, oh, well, the plant just needs more water. People will pour more water in, not knowing that they're making the soil even wetter and making the tree better off than it was before. So again, watering with tap water, big no-no. The roots of the plant suck up the pure actual H2O, the water, and they leave behind all the other crud. And this causes bad soil quality and causes your plant to eventually die. So what is the right way to water an indoor plant? The first thing you'll want to do is take your plant over to your kitchen sink or garage sink, whatever is larger and offers you more room. And you want to put the spigot on it and put it on relatively high. And as you can see here, the water is basically draining immediately through the soil, and it's not filling up the pot fast. This means that it's very fast draining soil, and you're going to want to sit here and rotate it for at least a couple of minutes, all the while the water is draining through the pot, through the hole in the bottom of the pot, make sure it has one, and into the drain. This means that fresh water is flowing through, cleaning and leaching the soil that your palm is growing in here. Now you can see it finally filled up. So this water is traveling all the way through the pot, taking with it all of the salts and minerals and other harmful elements, and basically keeping the pH and the salt level of the soil at an acceptable rate for the palm. This palm's been watered in the sink for probably about 2.5 to 3 years, and you can see most of the leaves are flawless. You can hear the water draining out of the bottom, and you'll want to let it drain for probably a couple of hours, overnight if you have the time. Okay, most of the water that was flooded in the top here is drained through, so we're going to go ahead and fill it while spinning it. Make sure your water is not too warm or too cold. I'm going to hold it and spin it until it fills up a second time. Turn off the water, let it drain again. This nice little palm here is another type of lady palm or rhapis called Rhapis lauensis. This one is very, very light as well and needs to be watered. This one has to be watered more often because the water drains through the dirt faster, which means the dirt has a lot of sand in it and doesn't really hold a lot of moisture. So if you're not careful, this one will dry out in a matter of 2 weeks. and the leaves will start to dry out. So anyway, it has to be watered every 2 weeks, and the problem with just running water through it is the water just goes right through the soil and doesn't stop and soak into it very well. It's like just running water off the side of a sponge. You know, it's not a very effective way to water the sponge. You got to get the water in there. So what we're going to do is, instead of doing it that way, we're going to grab a small bucket, place it in the sink, place the palm in the bucket, and go ahead and fill it up. Now you're going to want to fill it until the water reaches the top where the mulch is, and then let the palm sit for about an hour or two. And what this is doing is the soil, which acts more like a sponge, will be sitting immersed in water for an hour or two, and this will soak every crevice, nook, and cranny of that soil, which means it's going to hold the maximum amount of moisture, and you won't have to water the palm as often. Okay, it's been about an hour that this has been soaking in here, and as I pull it out, it's much heavier. A little bit of dirt left in the bottom there. Just pour this down the sink. Now that also leaches the soil and keeps the mineral and salt and pH levels at their where they should be. So that works just like, not quite as good as, but just like this other palm that we just ran water through continuously. This one doesn't get as much cleaning, but it's still not going to get all the salt buildups that you're going to have from pouring in just a little cup of water here and there, which slowly builds it up over time. So this one will sit in the sink and drain for about 30-45 minutes, and then it's ready to go back in its spot. Okay, all the water is pretty much drained out of our first Rhapis Coban here, so we're just going to pick it up and take it back over to its original location. Now, because we've allowed all of the water to soak, to fall out into the sink, there's really no more water coming out of the bottom here, so there's no need for a saucer. You can put a saucer underneath if you'd like, to avoid any little amounts of dirt that might come through, but I discourage against saucers because, again, the water sits there and gets sucked back up into the soil and causes salt and pH problems. So that is the correct way to water a palm. 2 weeks, every 2 weeks if it has fast draining soil, and if it has a heavier potting soil mix with more peat moss, I'd suggest about every 4 weeks. Let it dry out a lot before you water it. Don't get too eager and water it early. Let it dry out.